Welcome to Chapter 2. Because this is quite a long chapter, I've decided to break it up into two parts. We'll cover up to page 47 this week, and in the next lesson, we'll look at the remainder of the chapter. In Chapter 2, we'll have a look at how humans acquire and learn languages. This will be followed with discussions in Chapter 3 about teaching languages. But for now, let's look at the first half of Chapter 2. This week, we are going to look at 5 theories related to second language acquisition, or SLA. Here's a basic rundown of what we are going to do. Like last time, I expect you to watch this video more than just once, take some notes, and prepare for the discussions I mention in this video. This will help you be more active in class, which of course means you'll be learning a lot more. I'd like to start with a short discussion again this week. Because we are looking at how we acquire our first languages and learn second and other languages, I'd like you to think about the following discussion topic. How much do students' first languages influence their second language learning? For example, as a native speaker of Japanese, I imagine you have some disadvantages and advantages when studying English. Can you think of some? How about the other way? What advantages and disadvantages would native speakers of English have when learning Japanese in comparison to someone whose first language is, for example, Chinese? Think of some ideas and be ready to share them with your classmates. The first of the 5 second language acquisition theories we'll look at will be first language theories. Here, the belief is that one's native language is a main reason for students finding learning other languages difficult. On page 26, there are 8 concepts related to first language theories that you need to remember. One of these concepts, contrastive analysis hypothesis, suggests that one's first language can have a positive and negative effect on learning the second language. According to this way of thinking, when one's first language causes difficulty in learning the target language or interferes with learning, teachers should correct the mistakes. If they do not, the mistakes may automatically occur for students, which means the mistakes become fossilized. The contrastive analysis hypothesis is associated with B.F. Skinner's behavioral learning theories. Skinner said that humans will work harder to learn things when they are given rewards. These rewards may be given through giving praise, as seen in our textbook on page 27, or in other actual objects, such as stickers and prizes. Another idea related to first language theories is universal grammar, or UG. Again, there are some concepts on page 28 and 29 you need to remember. Noam Chomsky, who is a super famous linguist and expert on pretty much everything, suggested that everything related to language is not as simple as it seems. He said that there are language universals, or patterns and principles that all languages have in common. Chomsky also argued that humans are born with the ability to acquire languages. This means that we have an innate ability to pick up any language. So for Japanese people, because they were born in Japan, their brains chose the Japanese language setting in their brain. However, if the same Japanese person were born in France, for example, he or she would end up using the French language setting. Some scholars say that this ability to learn any language, however, is not because of linguistic features, but rather the community that they are in. Another issue researchers are trying to make clearer is about the age for language learning, and if there is a critical period, after which the ability to learn languages changes. What do you think? In your opinion, what is the best age to learn second languages? Young, that is around the start of elementary school, around puberty, that is about 12 or 13 years of age, or at adulthood, that is around 18 years or older. Prepare some ideas and share them in class. We now move on to cognitive learning theories. Remember that cognitive is to do with the brain, so it is about how we think. Once again, there are some concepts here that you'll need to understand clearly. Cognitive theories explain how learning takes place. An important part of cognitive learning is the connection of new material with what learners already know. This background knowledge is called schema. By creating this connection, we can bring about more meaningful learning. It is also important to remember that cognitive theories suggest that language learning is basically the same as learning other subjects, such as mathematics and science. This is different to the nativist way of thinking, which suggests learning language is different to learning other subjects. Some researchers argue that at first, language learners need to focus their attention on parts of language, and that explicit knowledge is needed. Once learners become comfortable with this and have practiced enough, this will become automatic, and learners will gain implicit knowledge. Using the language will be just like riding a bike, as they do not need to think carefully about each individual action. This contrasts with the opinions of those following input hypothesis, which is part of experience theories, to which we will focus on next. There are three main parts in this section. It may be a little long and difficult, so feel free to pause the video partway through and take a break if you need to. Experience theories, understandably, stress that languages are learned through direct experience with the target language. The first part of experience theories looks at the input hypothesis. This is one of the most famous theories related to second language acquisition, and was proposed by Stephen Krashen. Krashen argues that acquiring language, not learning it, is the key to becoming proficient. Classrooms should be full of listening and reading materials, providing input that is not too difficult, but also not too easy. Krashen also argues that students often feel anxiety towards using other languages. Therefore, instructors need to work to lower students' affective filters, resulting in their feeling more comfortable to take in the materials being provided to them. Next, we have conversation theories. Conversation theories, understandably, say students need to participate in conversations to become proficient in the language. This may be difficult for learners of lower proficiency, but through scaffolding, where a more highly proficient speaker helps by paying close attention, repeating words to show understanding, asking open-ended questions, making encouraging comments, and expanding on what the lower proficiency learner says, learners can make good progress with the language. Third, we have the output hypothesis. Merrill Swain argued that in order for language students to improve their language skills, they must produce language through speaking and writing. Unlike Krashen, Swain believes that just listening and reading is not enough. Therefore, students should be put in situations in which they must actively use the language. Swain adds that when students produce language, they are able to notice the difference between speakers of higher proficiency and themselves, reflect on the differences, and then modify their linguistic output accordingly. This is similar to the social distance hypothesis, which we'll look at in a couple of minutes. How are you going? Are you still with me? Remember, it's okay to pause the video for 2 or 3 minutes and have a break if you need to. Look, here's a picture of a kangaroo. Looks pretty relaxed, doesn't it? What a champion. Okay, let's get back to the exciting stuff. Now we move on to the fourth type of second language acquisition theory that we will concentrate on this week. Social theories are different to the previous three, which looked at learners as individuals, because social theories focus on learners as a group. Rather than asking why one particular student is or is not motivated to learn, for example, social theories ask why a group of students is or is not motivated. Reasons for success in language learning may be put down to the attitudes towards the target language communities held by the society in which the learners live. John Schumann's social distance hypothesis stressed that students must feel comfortable with the culture and native speakers of the language that they are learning. If society in general likes people from the target language group, learners will be more willing to communicate, and as a result, their language proficiency will improve. If, however, the social distance between the learner's culture and the culture of the target language is great, even including prejudice and stereotypes, it will affect learning in a negative way. On page 42 of our textbook, there is an interesting list of characteristics that make up social distance according to John Schumann. I'd like to relate our third discussion topic to these points. Thinking about Japanese students learning English, how much do you feel these 8 points affect learning success? Do any of Schumann's points stand out to you? This is not an easy question, so I hope you'll take a little extra time to think carefully about your opinions and ideas. Finally, we have sociocultural theories. Sociocultural theories are like the almighty way of looking at things because they appear to incorporate everything with a little bit of social and cultural factors, learners' languages experiences, larger cultural contexts, and even with cognitive theories. However, what is special about sociocultural theories is that they look at how learners manage their language experiences for their own purposes. Now, a name you need to remember here is that of Russian psychologist Len Vygotsky. Vygotsky stressed that all learning is the result of social interactions. This is important in the sociocultural theories, where the way of thinking is that 1. All language is cultural, and 2. All language learning is cultural. Also, as it's written halfway down on page 46, second language learners make efforts to communicate with speakers of the new language within the zone of proximal development, or ZPD. That is, they look for language experiences that are not too difficult for them. After this, learners reflect on their performance and think of plans and strategies to improve, better known as self-regulation. Teachers should be aware of the ZPD so they realize that their students will likely improve at different times and different stages, depending on who they are experiencing language learning with. Well, that is it for this week. I understand it has been a little difficult, but I hope you have a better understanding of these topics. Next week, we'll move on to the second half of Chapter 2. To prepare for class, make sure you have some ideas ready for the discussion points, and make sure you are ready for a test based on what we have covered this week.